I mean, we can't just let Dragon Ball end like this, right? Like, the logical part of my brain says, let it die. But in the deepest parts of my psyche, you know, the delusional part, my brain says Dragon Ball should go on forever. Now, I know that's unrealistic, especially with the recent news regarding Toyotaro, but if I were to entertain the thought of Dragon Ball having just one more full anime series, what would it look like? First, I gotta figure out what makes a good Dragon Ball anime. And the good thing is that I have 4 series to choose from that are all varying levels of quality, and using those is how I'll come up with my criteria. There's something poetic about the number 7 in Dragon Ball, 7 Dragon Balls, to me 7 key moments in Goku's journey that shaped him. So when I sat down and thought about what makes a great Dragon Ball anime, not just decent, not just watchable, but something truly great, I realized that there are 7 pillars that hold it all up. And just like the Dragon Balls themselves, when these pillars come together, they can grant us something truly special. So pillar 1 is that the Dragon Balls have to matter. For a series titled Dragon Ball, it's honestly wild how recently the Dragon Balls themselves more often feel like an afterthought. When they have mattered, like when the characters are searching for them, fighting over them, and racing to make a wish before someone else can, the story has real momentum, real stakes. You see the best of everyone involved. Whether it's King Piccolo trying to reclaim his youth, Vegeta and Nappa hunting them on Earth, or the 3-way race for the Dragon Balls on Namek, the Dragon Balls were the engine that pushed these stories forward. Even in the Moro arc, which many fans, including me, consider the best arc in all of Super, the Dragon Balls were a central focus. Moro hunting for them added pressure, it raised the stakes, and it gave us the reason to care beyond just another fight. Because his magic was built up to be this unstoppable power. So keeping him from regaining all of this power seemed like the most important thing ever, because Moro was already a handful without it. I wish I could say that the writing has been so strong that the story can survive without the Dragon Balls, but Dragon Ball Super tells me otherwise. When the Dragon Balls are front and center, the characters are tested in ways that mattered, and the plot feels like it has purpose. Pillar 2 is to bring back more grounded power scaling. One of the biggest problems with Dragon Ball today isn't just that characters are strong, it's that they're too strong. Power scaling in Dragon Ball has always had a tendency to spiral out of control, but once we cross into the strongest in the multiverse territory, something got lost. Fights stopped feeling personal, tension disappeared, and the path to growth, the real kind, not just new forms with new hair colors, became less about struggle and more about spectacle. Now I'll give credit where it's due. Both GT and Daima tried to rein this in. GT de-aged Goku, which limited his access to Super Saiyan 3, and Daima turned the entire cast into children, which weakened them as a whole. But instead of shrinking our characters, how about we reset the system itself? I'm talking about eliminating God Ki entirely. Strip it out. Find a narrative reason, let's say a realm where divine energy doesn't work, like the demon realm, and suddenly we're back in territory where power levels feel earned again. Even if they come across a villain who took that power away, that could work too. This wouldn't just reset the stakes, it would align the story with the ending of Z, where Beerus and Whis are nowhere to be seen, and Goku seems like a powerful martial artist, not a cosmic level god. And to be clear, Super did not start this problem. The power creep began in Z, but even back then, the characters weren't breaking reality or ranking among the top 20 beings in the entire multiverse. That room to grow was everything. It's what made each new transformation mean something. Now, Goku's likely going to surpass Jiren, who already broke the ceiling, and when that happens, where do you go next? Now listen, what we don't need now is Super Saiyan 5, 6, or 7. We've already got more than enough transformations. There's a solid foundation in the non-god forms we've already seen. Lean into that. Build a power system that encourages evolution without escalation. Let's stop trying to top the last biggest threat ever. Let's bring Dragon Ball back to a place where fights aren't just about who's stronger, they're about who's smarter and what's at stake for them. Not the multiverse, just them. Now, pillar 3 is a crucial one. I actually think it's the second most important, and that is to let the side characters shine. For a series with such a diverse cast, Dragon Ball Super had a frustrating habit of pushing everyone not named Goku or Vegeta into the background. And look, I get it. They're the face of the franchise, but Dragon Ball is always at its best when it feels like a team effort. When different fighters step up, bring their own energy, and push the stories in directions only they can. If this new anime of Dragon Ball is going to be great, then characters like Piccolo, Gohan, Goten, and Trunks need more time in the spotlight. And I'm not talking about one-off moments or a fight they lose just to show how strong the villain is. I mean meaningful character growth and a real impact on the outcome of the story. These 4 specifically stand out because they're the ones who can still make a difference after the events of Z. Piccolo was the guy once, a main fighter, a rival to Goku, and as time passed, he evolved into a mentor, yes, but he still has power and presence. And that evolution shouldn't be a retirement, it should be a pivot. He's shown potential to guide Goten and Trunks the way he once did for Gohan and challenge them to become their own warriors. Whereas Gohan still holds some of the keys to Dragon Ball's future. He's Goku's son, but more importantly, he's always had the most potential. When pushed, when inspired, and when he chooses to fight, he's not just a contender, he's the one who changes everything. The problem has never been Gohan's power, it's that the story seems to forget that he's there. And then there's Goten and Trunks, 2 characters who were literally born to carry the torch but never really got the chance to run with it. If this series is serious about the next generation, it can't keep them in the shadows. Give them a path, give them conflict, give them moments that matter, because the truth is, Dragon Ball doesn't need new characters to move forward, it just needs to finally use the ones it already has. Pillar 4, Pillar 4, Pillar 4, Pillar 4 is clear and personal stakes. A great Dragon Ball conflict isn't just about blowing up planets or saving the universe, it's about what the fight means to the people in it. The most iconic moments in this franchise didn't resonate because the stakes were high on paper, they hit hard because the stakes were personal. Take Goku versus Frieza. On the surface, it was about stopping a tyrant and saving Namek, but under the surface, it was about legacy. Then there's Gohan versus Cell, another fan favorite for good reason. That battle wasn't just another final boss showdown, it was the culmination of Gohan's entire arc from the beginning of Z. The quiet, gentle kid had become the one thing he'd always avoided, a fighter. Not because he wanted to, but because no one else could do what needed to be done. That responsibility, that internal struggle is what made that fight in that moment unforgettable. This is what Dragon Ball needs to get back to. Not just how do we stop this next god level threat, but why that fight matters to the people involved. What's at stake emotionally? What's changing within the characters? Personal stakes create resonance. They create moments we remember for decades. Without that, it's all just noise. And Pillar 5 is what I believe to be the most important pillar so far, and that is great antagonists. Powerful antagonists aren't enough. We've seen that. In fact, we've seen plenty of enemies who can shatter mountains, destroy planets, and tear through dimensions and still leave no real impact. What separates a good villain from a great one in Dragon Ball is simple. They don't just challenge the hero's strength, they challenge the hero's identity. Look at Frieza. Sure, he was terrifying, the strongest enemy Goku and the others had faced at that time. But what made him truly dangerous to Goku was what he represented. He wasn't just a tyrant, he was the living embodiment of everything wrong with the Saiyans' past. Goku's battle against Frieza was a confrontation with his own legacy and a choice to reject the cruelty of his birthright and define a new kind of Saiyan. Before they became allies, Vegeta and Piccolo were similar. They weren't just obstacles, they were philosophical opposites. Even in Super, for all its ups and downs, we saw a glimpse of this with characters like Zamasu and Moro. Zamasu wasn't good just because of his strength, it was his ideology, his belief that mortals didn't deserve to exist. That made him exciting. Moro, on the other hand, flipped the table by showing what happens when just raw, endless power is the threat. How do you beat someone who takes energy just by standing near you? The point is, Dragon Ball's best villains always force the heroes to change, to question themselves, to evolve not just in strength, but in spirit. If we want a Dragon Ball series that actually means something, the antagonists have to do more than punch hard. Alright, this next one might not matter to everyone, but if you've been watching me for a while, you already know my number one rule. If a story doesn't make me feel something, then I'm not invested. It's that simple. So Pillar 6 is just that. Emotional moments. And Dragon Ball needs them desperately. Dragon Ball has had emotional weight before. Some of the most memorable moments in the franchise stuck with us not because they were flashy, but because they meant something. Krillin's death in Dragon Ball wasn't just a twist, it changed the entire tone of the series, no, the franchise. That single moment kicked off Goku's transformation into something more than a fun-loving martial artist. It showed us that the world could hurt. Goku choosing to stay dead after the Cell games? That one stung. It wasn't just a sacrifice, it was a character decision that felt real. It was final. It was earned. It showed growth, maturity, and a willingness to remove himself for the sake of the world. But somewhere along the way, we lost that. In Super, characters die and come back before the sadness even settles. Worlds are destroyed and revived in the same episode. Dragon Ball feels like it's floating through its own stories. Things happen, sure, but nothing quite sticks. And this last pillar is the most important of them all, the one that holds everything else together. Character growth that is rooted in struggle. Yeah, power-ups are cool. New forms and screaming into the sky, I love all of that stuff. But what makes a new form legendary isn't just the look, it's what it took to get there. Super Saiyan wasn't hyped just because the hair turned gold. It was Goku watching his best friend die and finally snapping. Gohan's Super Saiyan 2 didn't hit because of lightning or power levels. It hit because it was the moment everything inside him, his fear, his rage, his compassion finally collided. That transformation told his story. That's what Dragon Ball used to get so right. Power came from pain, from purpose, from pressure. But lately, too often new forms just show up. No real build up, no real emotional core, just here's a new color. But power without growth is hollow. It means nothing if it isn't built on something real. If the characters aren't evolving, if they aren't being pushed to change, then what's the point? I don't think Dragon Ball needs to reinvent itself. I just think it needs to remember what made it powerful in the first place. So those are the 7 pillars, 7 ideas, one for every Dragon Ball. And when they're brought together, it could give us something special. We don't need a perfect series. We don't need constant transformations or multiversal threats or guys watching from the sidelines. What we need is a Dragon Ball that tells stories with meaning, characters with purpose, and moments that matter. Let me know in the comments what you think can make the return of Dragon Ball a special one. But with that being said, I want to thank you for getting to the end of the video. If you enjoyed this one and want more, hit that like button and subscribe. This is Matt, and thanks for watching. Y'all have a good one.